Allison Kubas, and I am now back in Oxford after spending my fall 2024 semester abroad in Luxembourg with Miami's MUDEC program. I am currently a third-year architecture student here at Miami, so as part of that, I was able to travel to MUDEC with the architecture cohort, which included 23 of my peers who were also in architecture and interior design, who I've been in studios and classes with for the past 2 years. This was one of the big deciding factors of me going to MUDEC because I knew that it would be easy to continue my architecture education, and I knew there would be so many real-life examples of the architecture I learned about in class and just in life that would really help me in my career journey, so this was a big part of the decision of why I decided to go. I was abroad the entire fall semester from August until December, and I lived in Differdange on my own in a studio apartment. When I first arrived in Luxembourg, it was actually my first time outside of the US. I had never been to the country before. I knew that almost every single aspect of being there would be a new, unique journey for me. The main goal that I outlined in my proposal was to become a more engaged student. Through my time at MUDEC, I wanted to make sure I was there not just to have fun and to travel, but I really wanted to make sure I gained something academically and personally and professionally out of the experience. One thing I did was I wanted to make a really big effort to actually participate in classes and really feel actively engaged. I found myself a frequent volunteer in class, especially in my Roman Civ class, which was my study tour course for MUDEC. I really found myself kind of talking and kind of leading some discussions with some of my other classmates and really being able to go back and forth with my professor during class and also on our study tour together. In fact, the Roman Civ study tour was really interesting for being engaged because it wasn't just learning things in class and then we actually went and visited them for a week. Seeing some of these sites in modern day really connected to kind of things I was thinking about through all of architecture and other things in my courses, where I was trying to think about culture of Europe, how their history is treated, how buildings are treated, how design and architecture and all of that has changed in the thousands of years of history in these places. So being able to actually kind of go and engage in things with a slightly different way, I wasn't just looking at architecture, we're looking at culture, and hearing about things from 2,000 years ago gave me some perspective. And today I wanted to go to this Roman Civ tour and combine it with things I was learning in architecture and combine it with things I was learning in our Lux 101 class, which was intercultural perspectives. And through some of the discussions we had in that class, talking about how different cultures view their history and treat things and just view life in general, I feel like I was able to make connections between that and really think about how do we treat our history in America, and it really made just some thoughtful thinking that I only could have done because I was combining knowledge from all of these different classes at once, as well as stuff I had learned in the past back in Oxford. One thing I found myself doing, which was actually funny, was on many trips when trying to find things that I wanted to look at, I actually found myself referencing lecture slides and notes from a class that I took freshman year. So almost 2 years ago now, I was looking up some of these old notes to try to think about what I found interesting about some of these sites and what's important to see. Actually taking this knowledge in these classes that I had taken and trying to apply it to have a more immersive, interesting time in these cities and not just see what everyone sees. The other primary goal that I outlined in my proposal was a need to be a better communicator. So very often I find myself a little bit of a control freak, so I wanted to take those tendencies to over-organize and use it to effectively communicate and actually not just say, hey, not just communicate plans, but make more thoughtful plans and really listen to the other people I was with and organize effectively using what I've learned from having actual genuine emotional conversations. Primarily, I found myself traveling within the same group of 5 girls, including me, and I think within this I kind of became a little bit of a main travel coordinator, where I was the one kind of taking initiative on making sure we had train tickets booked or plane tickets booked, or how are we going to get there, what train are we going to take to get to the airport. I found myself kind of the main communicator of this. I tried my best to really talk to people and kind of get a sense of what people were interested in, how interested they were in it, oh, we can't do all of these things, but how about it seems like more people are interested in this, let's do this. Really trying to actively lead by listening to my group and not imposing myself, because especially when you're in stressful situations that traveling often brings, many things go wrong, and I feel like it was really important to have someone to kind of look to and know that someone here can figure out what's going wrong. Being able to communicate and read situations was a skill I developed a lot here, because you are put in so many more uncomfortable situations when you're traveling with people you don't know that well. Everything feels so unfamiliar when you're traveling, especially because many of the people I was traveling with have either taken 0 or not very many international vacations. Many of us were not used to the feelings of constant language barriers and constant uncertainty of existing systems. So a little bit of stress really led to us really having to sit down and have some uncomfortable conversations about what we needed to do and what we needed from each other, but having someone to really be like, okay, this is a conversation we need to have. We can't just brood. Being able to kind of acknowledge the social situations and move on from it and make successful trips out of angst and stress was really important. And I feel like I really stepped up in that, and I'm very proud of myself. I feel like I've grown. I think the kind of stepping up I was doing towards the end of the semester was something that I wouldn't even think possible for myself in the beginning. I only think it's because of all these situations I put myself in that I was able to grow and learn from it and figure out what to do best. Also with communication, a big aspect of my semester was my studio project, which was a duo project, and that was the first time I had ever done such a major group project. There was a large point during the semester for not just me, but the other architecture majors that I was talking to, where studio was probably about 90% of the work we were doing. We would dedicate almost every single night that we were in different college to just working on studio all day. It became kind of very intensive, and it was really interesting because this was the first time I had really done such an intensive group project. I have a tendency when I do group projects to really want to split up and chunk and just say, you do this, you do this, you do this. But when you design something with someone, you really have to just talk and collaborate on every single decision. You can't just send someone a chunk of it and say, you design this half, I design this half, because it's not going to work. I found myself working with someone I was not very familiar with, and ultimately having to really talk through and collaborate through every single detail. I found myself making concessions I didn't think I would make, concessions that I think led the thing to the better, because we would talk about it and we would decide what we wanted to do as a group instead of just letting our own thoughts and feelings and egos steamroll each other. And this did take a lot of process. It was really hard for us to want to challenge each other and talk at the beginning. I think the experience of working so closely one-on-one with a person on a project that really required constant back and forth, I really learned how to be collaborative, which is such an important skill in my field. Learning how to be truly collaborative and saying that you can just say things for the sake of saying things and throwing ideas in the ring, and that you can question things that might not need to be questioned, but just question them for the sake of why are we doing this, not just kind of accepting things for the sake of getting it done, because there wasn't really a getting it done in studio. Things aren't that straightforward. In fact, learning how to communicate and have trust in an idea and trust in what we've done together has led to make a project that I am really truly proud of, and a project that earned me the honor of the Architecture and Design Award at MUDEC, given out by my professors. I also, and this almost connects back to the engagement part, I really made an effort to try to talk to my professors. I think that actually taking a chance to socialize and really talk to people really does increase your cultural awareness and your general understanding of the world. So I'm really glad that I kind of took myself a little bit out of my comfort zone to really just talk to people and not just think the thought, it would be interesting to ask that and then never ask that. As kind of talked about with the communication aspect, I really did have a major group on kind of pushing my group into doing things. One thing that I did was I tried to be the person to make sure we all learned a little bit of the local language before I went to a new country, so we can at least say basic polite words. I think I was a big pusher of that because I really wanted to make sure that we were respecting these cultures we went into. I was trying so hard to be aware of the entitlement that many Americans constantly feel when they travel abroad, simply because so many people speak English and so many things are so easy for us because we grew up in an English-speaking country and because the US has so much influence. So I was trying my best as I traveled to think about why these systems exist. When I saw signs in English, I saw posters posters advertising American movies or American products. I tried to think about maybe how those led there and not just take it at face value. I feel like me and all the people I traveled with, we really learned so much just from being around each other and how we all navigated problems together, and we all had such a unique influence on each other. It was really interesting to contextualize and think about that while this entire experience was an incredible big adventure and it's one I'll remember for the rest of my life, to many of the people I interacted with, I was one of many tourists they see a day. I was one of many Americans they see a day. So thinking about my place in the bigger picture of the world was something really interesting. Having exposure to all these different ideas really led me to be able to more objectively look at my own perceptions of the world. It took a lot of independent initiative to keep myself in order the whole time and to make sure I could still be the leader and communicator that I wanted to be. I knew that if I stopped doing some of these things, then the trips would still happen and things would still go. I personally felt like some of the looking up for trips I was doing is allowing myself to have a better experience on trips, and allowing the people I was traveling with to have a better experience on trips would help us a lot in the future and help grow our minds and help grow our professional educational development. MUDEC really was an experience I'll remember for the rest of my life. While of course it had very many highs and very many lows, the combination and fullness of the experience really led me to grow a lot as a person, both professionally, socially, and academically. And I hope that some of the skills and some of the lessons I learned while abroad help inform the rest of my life.